Good morning, everyone, and welcome to InsureTalk56. That sounds crazy. My name is Christelle Coleman, and I'm coming to you live from Cape Town. Now, it's September. It's supposed to be spring. I'm wearing my special spring dress that I wear every year on this month of spring on InsureTalk. But here in Cape Town, it's still pretty much winter. So, yes, I know that in Johannesburg, you're already getting the good weather out there. And on the note of spring and fresh starts and new beginnings, today we are very, very honored to have one of our best supporting brands as our headline sponsor. Our topic is, let me start with that. Our theme for today is redefining expertise, underwriting claims, and the future of insurance. And there is really I battle to think of a better sponsor for this episode or event today than Old Mutual Insure. Now, Old Mutual Insure has a history that dates back more than 180 years. It still blows my mind that we have a business in our market that's been around for so long. As one of the leading companies in Southern Africa's non-life insurance, also known as short-term insurance landscape, they are justifiably proud of their tradition of service and quality, as well as their range of insurance solutions, which are amongst the best on offer anywhere in South Africa, and I'm sure on the African continent. And I tell you, we can give some of the more developed markets in the world a run for their money with licenses like Old Mutual Insure. So OMI, we really appreciate you supporting us here today. So let's jump straight into our first speaker of the day. Lewandile Ntwana is going to talk to us, first of all, Head of Public Sector and the Specialty Division at Old Mutual Insure. And the topic of conversation is the forces shaping the future of specialist insurance, adapting to a changing world. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Lewandile. With 21 years of industry experience, Lewandile has worked for Mutual and Federal, as we remember it, and our Old Mutual Insure, Santam, Lion of Africa, and Standard Insurance Limited. His experience spans across personal lines, commercial, corporate, and reinsurance. So obviously a very well-versed and informed individual to talk to us on the topic of the forces shaping the future of specialist insurance. Over to you.
Good morning, and thank you to Christelle. I'm looking at my screen and I'm seeing just over 2,600 people on the line. And let me just say, I am glad I'm not seeing you live. It gives me some breathing time behind the screen. With that said, every now and then I'll get to imagine your nods and your smiles back anytime throughout the presentation. Just to get started, let me share my presentation first. There we go. All right, and then just some house rules. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Should you have any question during the presentation, please just drop a note there. At the end of this presentation, I will make time to respond to them later on. So to get started, the topic for today, the forces shaping the future of specialist insurance, adapting to a changing world. I thought to start it off, let me just look at this very fitting quote. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And I thought, let me highlight just that part at the end, the last three words, responsiveness to change. And I think the topic emphasizes adapting to a changing world. As you adapt, you have to be responsible. The world is changing, is shifting, and in most cases at a pace that if you are not aware or paying attention, you could just be left behind. And as I reflect back, there's quite a topical story that's always discussed at most business schools. And I think most of you might be aware of the demise of Kodak, that company that made those films that we used back in the day. And their demise was mainly due to a couple of things. Their lack of agility, lack of responsiveness, lack of flexibility, and just ignoring what was happening around them. They believed the digital technology was not going to be something that's going to unseat them or disrupt them in the past. And yeah, as we have it today, they are no more. And it just shows you the importance of responsiveness to change, adaptability to forces and everything that's happening around you. Though I understand this is not an insurance industry story, it is quite relevant to our industry. Our industry is not immune to disruption, digital disruption as you have it. A lot of things have changed. Policies are no longer being written on a piece of paper. There's no filing rooms. There's no filing clerks. We just have technology taking care of the business on a daily basis. So the key thing, as I get into the presentation, just remember those words: responsiveness to change, being able to adapt to a changing world. And I think just to set the scene, just a quick look on the industry as we've had it in the past. So, yeah, as mentioned, in my 20 years of the industry, I've been able to see some of those points which I've highlighted there. So at some point, some years ago, insurance had become so commoditized. There was nothing different. It was just simply interchangeable offerings throughout the different companies. It lacked the expert. And if you think of an insurance person, we've always grown to know these professionals as people who were experts. They knew what they were talking about, and they would come and give you advice, and you would rest with that piece of paper having paid for it, with a lot of promises in it, but you would trust that they would respond should any eventuality occur. Customers had started asking a lot of questions. As you would know, consumers over time, they trusted the expert, but as time goes, you can imagine one claim being rejected, another being told, no, you were underinsured, and all those kind of negative responses that the contract had to respond to after having been sold all those questions, or after having been sold all those promises. So at some point, they were bound to ask a lot of questions. And I mean, if you remember the days of the Multi-Mark III, a lot of assets that a client would own typically, insurers spend a lot of time trying to fit all these types of assets into this already made product offering from the insurance industry. And there was a lack of flexibility in it. It either could be covered or could not. If it didn't fit within the bounds, then it was never going to be covered. And it left clients with a lot of questions as to, as the people who design the product, is it a case of now our industry has become so inward looking in their approach to designing solutions that are meant for the clients, in that there was no consideration, there was no flexibility for clients. All we saw was just many different generic policy wordings across the industry. Same promises sold, just dressed up in, all these different good-looking brands, but at the end, all in the same thing. The unique needs of the client were no longer catered for. And I think one thing that was happening whilst all of this was happening in the industry was, just moving as it was. Something was happening. The client was changing. The client was evolving. And the client continued asking the questions and continued to trying to find solutions that would properly cover their business as it is, and not trying to fit it within bounds of something that could not be changed by an industry that was not willing to do that. So the client, indeed, some of the things started, becoming more tech savvy, and they were no longer just a passive recipient who took anything that was being sold to them. They questioned a lot. Their risk landscape was changing at quite a pace. At some point, the client we insured some 10 years ago was no longer the same. So new and unique clients emerged. And if you think of new industries, new industry regulations that came up, a lot of those regulations would come to our clients in their various industries with a lot of onerous risk and compliance requirements that they would have to comply with in their operations on a daily basis. And as the clients, in their approach to risk management, they viewed a lot of risks as they could manage others within, and they could pass others on to someone else to manage them at a cost. And that's where insurance came in. And the moment it became impossible for them to pass certain risks that they would ordinarily pass them on to someone else to manage them, that issue continued as to, is this industry really catering for its clients, or is just simply selling what it believes is valuable for the clients, but it's not? As that was happening, bespoke weddings were slowly becoming a thing because each client came with their own risk needs, risk requirements. They've got a business to run. Their focus is on the operations. They've got an industry that has made a promise that they are here to take care of their business whilst they take care of their daily business, which is whatever industry they operate in. And they started requesting tailored weddings to deal with their unique risks. So the client became also more ready and collaborative with the insurer and the broker as well. And if you think of typically risk surveys, generally in our industry, it used to be a case of an insurer goes out and does a risk survey at your premises, comes back and communicates their findings, whatever they would be. There would be risk requirements which you as a client are expected to implement. And the conversations used to be so one-sided in a way that insurer simply says, Mr. Client, we would like you to address A, B, and C. We're giving you 30 days to do all of that, regardless of capital constraints and all of that. And that would be followed by a threat at the end of it, which basically said, your failure or non-compliance to implementing any of these risk requirements will result in either, some punitive action, either your claim not being paid, a higher excess being applied, and all those kind of things. There was no room for the client to come back and say, look, for this, we need so much capital, and we probably need 5 years or whatever to implement this. However, we are willing to work that journey with you. And the shift we've seen, especially in the specialist type of insurance since that is insurers now typically sit down with a broker and a client across a table, and they chart a path where they say, we understand these are the requirements for our risk to become insurable for however long, for a longer term. However, we'd need so much time in order to implement them. And insurers have become more willing to now sit around that table and say, look, we'll put together a program, be it a 5-year or a 3-year program, within which you start implementing step 1, step 2, step 3. Eventually, you get a risk that has fully been rehabilitated, remediated for a much longer period. And what that does at the end of it, as painful a process as it could be, at the end of it, you've got an insurer that sleeps easy, knowing that this client has fully met our risk requirements. And you've got a client that also now feels comfortable saying, you know what, even if a fire breaks out, my operations will not entirely be paralyzed. We'll still be able to operate some part of the operation. So that chance of disruption is no longer as dire as it would have been. So through that collaboration, all parties on the table have benefited. We've got at the end of it, we've got a client that remains insurable for the foreseeable future, and that's what our industry needs as well. Which highlights that that walking the journey with the client is a shift that was necessary on the part of the insurers. So all of this was a loud call for specialized insurance solutions from the industry. So these specialized solutions are generally characterized by, obviously, complexity, unique risk coverage, emerging risks. We've seen quite a couple of them, and I mean, I can just highlight cyber there. Bespoke weddings, obviously, tailored solutions. Clients now can state openly, this is what they think would, fully cover their losses or their business should anything occur. Risk-specific offerings. So everything else went beyond just the generic policy weddings that were just there for any other client, regardless of what your operations were. And that shift demonstrated the responsiveness to change as the industry. I'm going to keep referring to that quote at the beginning, responsive to change. So that demonstrated that responsiveness, which was demonstrated by our industry players, which is the insurers. The specialist insurer now understood that the landscape was shifting. It was no longer the same as it was those years back. And the shift was generally driven by, disruptive technologies, to mention a few. A highly informed client that knew exactly, this is the type of solutions they needed. Increased complexity of the risks, regulatory environment, obviously, and yeah, geopolitical and global market uncertainty also playing a part in there. Now let's look at the forces shaping the future of the insurance, of the specialist insurance. The very first one, new and unprecedented risks. So I think just in the recent years, we've seen quite a lot of these forces playing a part. If you think of cybersecurity threats, evolving traditional coverage models, cybersecurity threats have become a thing so much that we've seen various products being designed. We've seen various responses. We've seen even willingness from insurers, reinsurers, all the various partners that are involved in designing the solutions, everyone willing to come together and find a solution. Climate change increasing catastrophic risk. I think, the one that the most recent one that still sits with all of us in our industry will always be the KZN floods, which was quite recent, quite unexpected. No actuarial models could have foreseen that. It's just a demonstration of the world is changing, and not just at a pace that we can rest and hope to catch up. It is quite a rapid pace. Technology and data analytics are becoming game changers in our space. If you think of AI-driven underwriting, let me just say one of our speakers that's still coming up, I think after myself, will delve deeper into AI. So I'll just leave it at that point and let me not steal his spotlight. And then regulation and consumer expectations. So I think, as highlighted earlier on, the client has actually now gotten a louder voice. Their expectations are openly communicated, via their brokers to the insurers themselves, that this is what they think their risk will better be catered for by. The regulatory environment, I think compliance has become a non-negotiable. I think every day, not only our industry, I think many industry, almost daily, almost weekly, you read about FSCA having imposed fine on company so and so for whatever. So these are things that have also forced us as insurers to change our approach, change our ways, and move with the times. And the last point, shifts in market dynamics. We've seen increased volatility, especially, and I'll keep referring on to the KZN floods as being the most big and recent, especially in the property environment. Reinsurers as well have started looking at South Africa differently. Our industry was one where many other type of catastrophes were like something you could not even imagine or think of. We've seen quite a lot of them. Every year we almost expect some form of flooding or floods, be it two from Western Cape within a 12-month period, at least one from KZN and various other provinces. And that tells us the world is indeed shifting. How we look at risk should no longer be the same as it was back in those years. So as if, that was not enough to worry about. Our issues that we face as the industry have further been compounded by limited risk diversity. And if you think of an insurer, let's make an example of an insurer that would have been mainly focused on one line of business. So let's say a heavily reliant on property type of insurer. Just imagine what their year would have been after the KZN floods. The call for diversification is right across the industry. If any insurer wishes to be around for at least the foreseeable future and a couple of years down the line, they would need to have a diversified portfolio of clients. Capacity constraints. So I think as highlighted, as these losses were starting to peak, as these losses were starting to happen and coming from, areas we thought could never affect the South African insurance market, reinsurers were watching that and they started looking at South Africa differently. And that has a direct impact on how much capacity we can still have and limitations in certain instances. And then, of course, there are costs attached to your cost of reinsurance will no longer be the same as it was those years back. Lack of specialist skills. I think for those years of being general insurers that were just, almost pushing out one policy wording throughout the market, regardless of what type of risk you were dealing with. As we were doing that, we were creating a workforce that was, only one-dimensional thinking, if I can use that word. As the shift started to happen, as we started tailoring solutions, as we started offering those bespoke weddings, we needed the workforce to also move the same direction. These are the same people that are going to be underwriting these risks. These are the same people that are going to be communicating these risks, whether it's to the clients or clients directly or to the brokers. The difficulty to innovate also being an issue. I think specialized insurance solutions has always been viewed as this, big dinosaur, which you could probably do so few with it. You can't even move it from one direction to the next. And that kind of thinking is now starting to change and has to change for any insurer that specifically specialist insurers that wishes to be around for longer in the coming years. Adapting to a changing world. I think from just the bit I've gone through, there's no question around the change that is happening, one, and two, the need for us to adapt. How we respond to this change is what informs how long we remain to be as the specialist insurers. And I think as the insurance industry broadly, that responsiveness to change becomes critical. Our biggest threat, obviously, adaptation. Things are happening. We need to also be moving at the same pace, if not even faster than what's currently happening. The shift from a reactive to a proactive mindset. Remember, you've been doing things a certain way for a very long period, and you become so accustomed to it. And any form of move or shift from how you've done things requires a lot of change management, but not only that, but it requires a different mindset altogether. It requires, to some extent, even a different culture, different workforce that is able to anticipate what's likely to happen and proactively design solutions that can safeguard our industry against those threats as they become a reality. So insurers must anticipate and design products for risks that don't yet exist. So that foresight, that being able to see what's likely to happen. Our access to data today is much better than it was back then. You are not dealing with pieces of paper that are sitting somewhere at I don't know, at a metro file, whatever, at a filing cabin in a box somewhere. You are dealing with data that's sitting in systems. It becomes usable for any decision making. And I think that's the advantage we have in today's days. But that all depends on our willingness to utilize the tools that are available. So technology is one of them. The decisions of the past should be informing how we move in the future. Agility and flexibility must be embedded in our risk assessment. I think being agile and being flexible, whilst you're still sitting and trying to make sense of the risk and whether should you insure it or should you not, or many a times that decision is based on your own personal experience. If you have never come across this type of risk as the person, as the underwriter, you are most likely going to look away from it because you are basing your decision on your experience of it. It's even worse if your entire environment, be it your team, your department, has never come across such a risk. So no one has got the necessary expertise to make a call on it. In today's terms, you've got data. You can go and look at those that have dealt with such a risk in the past. Put all of that together into a usable form of data that can help you make a decision on whether to go for the risk or not to. The power of intermediaries cannot be emphasized more. I think if you think of brokers, throughout my time in the industry, I've always known them as simply a distribution channel. They were the people that are going to bring you business in exchange for commission. And when you think about it, there was no different approach. It was all brokers were the same to any insurer, and to some extent that will lead to even price wars, where the only way a certain broker gets to keep a business is if they charge the cheapest price, and the only way insurer A gets that broker to place the business with them over insurer C or D is by having the cheapest price. And long term, that has a dire effect on the earnings of either the insurer or the broker themselves. And that pushed a different look especially for specialist insurance space, where long-term and sustainable relationships had to become something that was looked at. So your broker is no longer just someone to bring you business, no longer just a sales channel that brings you business, but it's a partner you sit across a table. And if I think of the earlier example I used of trying to get a client to buy into a long-term risk rehabilitation process, risk remediation program, it requires the broker that's partnering with you, and they are seeing the long-term future of this client together with you as an insurer. In such an instance, you could not achieve that with you looking at the broker as simply a channel, as simply someone that brings you the business. So you needed to have a strategic partner, and that is that broker. Deep collaboration leads to better underwriting. So I think this one as well, it's further emphasized on the point above that the collaboration can only happen where there is partnership. When we are on a transactional relationship, there's less likely going to be any chance for collaboration. It's a transaction. You either give me that or I go and look for it from insurer Z, and then maybe they can do it. And so the need to move from that to a more collaborative partnership type of a solution is a necessity. The future of So future-proofing specialist insurance. If I look at these following points, so as the specialist insurers or the industry at large, we need deep expertise and tailored solutions. Those deep expertise, they come from what we invest in as the specialist insurers. I've mentioned the issue of our workforce, our talent. So investing in those deep expertise. Once we've got them in place, the accuracy in risk assessment, the accuracy in underwriting is a given. And the second one being we need greater pricing precision. A better pricing of specialized risks does enable accurate reduction of adverse selection. If we invest on that as the specialist underwriters, we stand a greater chance of having looked at our risks firstly accurately, and then after that having priced them correctly, precisely, and that informs how we are able to withstand the various losses that we are likely to experience in the future as the industry. And the third point to touch on is our flexibility and agility. I think I've also highlighted on this at the beginning, how we should remain, as insurers, we should always remain with that approach of being agile and flexible at all times. Things are shifting. What we've known to be is no longer is today. And then to innovate and product development, that is another key thing we need to deeply invest in as the industry. The emergence of new risks. I think a lot of risks we're dealing with today, probably 10 years ago, we would not have imagined would have existed. Having specialists such as actuaries, data scientists, product developers. I mean, if you think of having just those expertise in your team, those insights, that data, that is what you need in order for you to make that informed decision as to whether you should take on a risk or you shouldn't. And that is what we need as a specialist insurance industry and the industry at large to be able to ensure our sustainability. And I think as I close, I still go back to that opening quote. Our responsiveness to change is what will inform our long-term sustainability as the industry. That is the end of my presentation, and thank you to everyone. Let me also take this time to introduce the next speaker. So our next speaker is Richard Eustace, Head of Specialty Risk Engineering, who will be speaking to us on the topic of specialty risk engineering value proposition. Over to you, Rich.
Yes, a very good morning, everybody, and what a privilege to be able to present to you this morning. A lot of what I'm going to say, Luandile has covered in the various ways, but it's important for I think the audience to understand some of the intricacies of a risk engineering department or a surveying department, and where the actual value proposition comes into it. So to demonstrate my age, I'm going to admit that 30 years ago, when I left the fire service and joined the mighty Mutual and Federal as a junior surveyor, I was told, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to protect our treaty reinsurers. But as time has passed, so the whole landscape has changed significantly. And I think following my presentation, you might have a slightly better appreciation for for the current risk engineering landscape. I also welcome you to put in questions in the Q&A, and I'll answer them shortly after my presentation. Okay, so we have a bit of an agenda for this morning. Who are we and who are our surveyors and our risk engineers? What is our footprint look like nationally? What are our risk engineering capabilities? What sort of technology do you use in a risk engineering area or a survey area? And what is proactive risk management? And how does it add to the value proposition and the partnering between clients, brokers, and insurers? So if we go to who we are, we're a bunch. I'm lucky I think I have the largest survey team in the country with about 47 surveyors and about 15 support staff and survey administrators. But we have professional engineers through various disciplines, mechanical, electrical, process engineers, and surveyors um, in good standing. Um, as a group, we hold a collective of about 200 odd years of experience in risk assessment, surveying, and risk improvement. We are also skilled to survey any risk underwritten, which is quite a challenge in the industry because you need to be a jack of all trades and a master of as much as you possibly can, and make sure that you have a proper risk engineering resource doing a survey um, at a particular client or a particular occupancy, and that engineer needs to have an intimate knowledge of that particular industry. Otherwise, it becomes a bit embarrassing, and the credibility of the survey is voided. So we also need to know international codes and standards for various reasons and have intimate knowledge of those codes and standards. Um, the reason is pretty straightforward. We operate in Africa. Old Mutual Insure operates in sub-Saharan Africa in various shapes and forms. And if you go and do a survey in Botswana and you prescribe South African codes and standards, you don't get a very happy response. And there are sovereignty issues. So it becomes a case of asking the client, what codes do you want to comply with? And select an internationally recognized standard which is best suited for that particular occupancy. We also need to solve problems. So what sort of problems do we encounter? We encounter hazards and exposures which have an impact on underwriting business. So we need to find pragmatic solutions and propose risk improvements or mitigations that are either going to minimize that potential hazard or exposure or exclude it in the best case scenario. Our risk improvement programs. So we often get challenged that every survey that we get has exactly the same risk improvements and it's copy paste. And it's not the case. Risk improvements are bespoke for a particular client and they are subject to the surveyor or risk engineer's findings on the day of the survey. Then I spoke about global best practice earlier, where you need to find the best solution for a client. And it might not necessarily rest in South African protection standards. It might be better suited in global protection standards. Bearing in mind that our reinsurers benchmark on international standards. So typically they'd benchmark on the American NFPA standards, they'd benchmark on the British standards or the European standards. So what we prescribe as risk engineers and surveyors has to satisfy their expectations. Okay, so as I said, I'm quite privileged to have a big team with a large footprint. So we cover the major metros and outlying areas. Um, and I'm comfortable to say that we can usually get to a survey within 24 hours. The only thing that would prevent us from doing the survey is the availability of the client, um, and where it is geographically. The biggest thing being the availability of the client, and the preparation that the broker has made with the client in contemplation of the survey. Yeah, big footprint, big area to cover, um, and we do focus on turnaround times, um, and SOPs and delivery requirements. And those all fall in line with realistic timelines around drafting a survey report and publishing it. Okay, so unique to Old Mutual Insure, we have a whole bouquet of what we're able to do, and there are some things that we're not able to do. The things we're not able to do, we'll contract out to specialists in those specific fields. So we're able to do the light hazard occupancies, complex risks, the middle market, commercial, industrial, and then the larger limits, commercial and industrial operations, special risks. So where specialized protection systems are required, like solvent extraction clients and high hazard occupancies, we're able to do that. One of our pillars in our company's history has been our underwriting mining risks. So we have specialty or specialist risk engineers in the mining environment. Then our agility to adapt into the renewable energy process, that requires a total different set of skills. And the risk engineers and surveyors needed to upskill to understand the specific hazards and exposures that come with renewable energy and the different types of renewable energy. We don't publish it, but we do have the ability to test fire protection systems, fire pumps. We don't issue certificates. We simply keep the test results and the inspection results for underwriting purposes. Machinery breakdown on the engineering side of it, we do have specialized engineers that are able to do machinery breakdown surveys and quite complex surveys into things like performance management, predictive maintenance, and the maintenance regimes, whether it's scheduled or critical, and insurance spares. So that is a specialized area that we have capacity in. And I alluded to that, the next point, critical scheduled performance maintenance engineers. We've spoken about that already. Then, it's all very nice being in your own little ecosystem, but you do need to break out. And our area is involved in a lot of committees technical committees and organizations outside of underwriting or insurance, where we draw knowledge from other insurers, fire protection industry, engineering industries, and various other legislative authorities, where we keep our finger on the pulse on things like rewriting of codes and standards, to make sure that they remain conservative and not get diluted to a point where ensuring things becomes a bit difficult, um, because the specific standard has been diluted, to something which is not really great from an underwriting perspective. Then obviously, as a technical environment or technical specialist, we produce guidelines. So we produce underwriting guidelines, we produce risk control guidelines, which we publish from time to time, and they're open, they're public documents. They go out into the market, and the benefit is that brokers and clients will get an understanding of what our expectations are around issues of protection, and level of risk control. Then also, we obviously, as I said earlier, we need to understand the codes, and we need to apply the codes correctly. So we have intimate knowledge of NFPA, FM Global, then the South African ASIB rules, the other sprinkler installation rules, SANS codes. Then we look at the British fire standards, the European standards, and really we need to make sure that we're prescribing something that makes sense and can be backed up to a particular standard or code. Our area is actually got quite a lot of tech in it. It's not necessarily me in a pair of jeans with safety boots and a hard hat on, walking around the site. But our survey process and our workflow process is done through Salesforce. We are in the process of building a report building app, which is very exciting for us at the moment. For industry classifications, we use the international SIC codes. For hydraulic calculations, we use Canute. Natural catastrophe, flood models, wind, hail, storm, wildfire, we use Swiss Re CatNet Premium, and then JBA for our flooding models. As I said earlier, workflow processes are in Salesforce, and we're also able to track risk improvement or the risk improvement implementation process in Salesforce. Then there are instances where a survey is not necessarily required. So we wouldn't want to send somebody to Carcamus to check on the completion of risk improvements. So we have Virtual Eye, which is a system where a client is sent a link on a mobile device, and as long as they have internet connectivity, they're able to open the link, and it's a real-time video link with audio. So we're literally able to sit behind a dashboard and walk a client through their particular premises, to get updates on risk improvements, or to do remote surveys. Pushing ahead, so what's the point of doing a survey, and what are the potential outcomes? So basically the point is to get a bespoke solution to risk improvement issues or risk control issues. So we need to make sure that our risk improvements are tailor-made. They are specific to that particular industry, and you're not asking somebody to put water on a furnace. And that the risk improvement is innovative, and is pragmatic. At OMI, we like to work on cradle to grave solutions. So if we take the installation of a sprinkler system as an example, a survey will be done, an adverse feature or a finding will be that a sprinkler system is required either because of the occupancy, the floor size, or the commodity classification, and the client gets presented with this bombshell. So what we like to do is walk the client and the broker through this process. So advise the client to get a fire engineer on site to do an assessment, to do a preliminary fire protection design. We at OMI will vet that design to see that it's fit for purpose, and it is suitable for the occupancy and it ticks all of the boxes. We'll then recommend that that design gets pre-approval from an inspection authority, and then obviously we'll track the installation of that sprinkler system. And these installations can take up to 7 years. So what we're looking for is traction. We're looking for CapEx allocation. We're looking for milestones. We're looking for certain targets. And as long as those are met, we're quite comfortable in continuing to underwrite a client. This is very important because some of these installations take place over more than one renewal period. And the last thing that we want is that once an installation is complete, that that business gets placed somewhere else at a much cheaper rate or better terms and conditions. So we understand that obviously the better the risk, the more we need to sharpen our underwriting pencils. So also risk engineering is that sort of communication conduit between the client, the broker, and the insurer. And within OMI, obviously, customer intimacy is very important. And traditionally, in the olden days, the broker did everything that they could to keep the insurer away from the client. But as things have evolved, having the underwriter, the broker, and the clients collaborating together certainly achieves a lot of goals and enables relationships, longevity, and dare I say a little bit of commitment and loyalty from clients. Understanding that in the soft markets, the relationship is key, and being a value proposition is very important. So, what does this all mean? What are we trying to achieve? So, we're looking at improved portfolio risk profiles through consistent risk selection, and making sure that the risks that are underwritten or taken on are within our appetite. The survey report, the risk engineering reports do obviously speak directly to pricing and deductibles. Then we also would like to manage specific hazards and specific exposures that are identified during the survey process. We also need to determine correct loss estimates. And for capacity reasons, we obviously need to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing when we start developing a potential loss scenario, and we present it to the underwriters and to the reinsurance support. Then, as I said earlier, we need to keep our reinsurers happy. So our risk engineering and surveying philosophy has to tie into what the reinsurers are anticipating or expect from a prudent underwriter or an insurer. Then, as I said earlier, and I keep repeating myself because of my age, increased client centricity, longevity through flexible, solution-driven risk management partnerships. So I think I'm going to end there because that gives a great overview of the risk engineering bouquet, our intentions, and how we go about our daily business. Please, as I said earlier, I'm open to questions and answers in the Q&A box, and you are welcome to reach out to me for a conversation anytime. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity. And yes, enjoy the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Well, we've reached almost the halfway mark of our conference today, our digital conference. And as always, we have Thokozile Mahlangu, who is the CEO of the Insurance Institute of South Africa. She normally gives us an industry update. And I know today we have Thokozile back in person. So thank you for joining us, Thokozile, and tell us a bit about what's happening in the industry.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another InsureTalk session. As we celebrate Heritage Month, we are reminded of the richness of our traditions, cultures, and histories that shape who we are today. In our professional journeys, heritage teaches us that true progress is built upon strong foundations. As our predecessors spent time investing in knowledge and skills development, we are to continue to learn and become better versions of ourselves, identify areas of knowledge that we need to grow, and continue learning, continue becoming a better person as you contribute to the profession. Heritage is a month to honor the past and to also invest in the future that looks into continuous development, into leadership development and collaboration across generations. So happy Heritage Month. The month of October at ISA is an anniversary month. Last year we introduced 2 events in honor and celebration of our anniversary month. One of those events is Sip and Paint. We're going to be hosting another Sip and Paint event on the 10th of October. And this is in response to what members have been asking for, opportunities to network or engage with each other as members and corporate partners while they really in a social setting. So we are responding to that call. So members look out for the invites for the Sip and Paint. And that Sip and Paint is generously sponsored by ISB Optimus, one of our corporate partners. A big thank you to ISB Optimus. We also going to be hosting golf that we introduced last year. Again, another response to members' needs to connect with each other. The golf will be taking place on the 30th of October. So if you are a golfer or aspiring golfer, take the opportunity to register and join us if you're a member on the line and really be part of this event as we honor and celebrate the anniversary month of the ISA. We look forward to having you there. And if you're on the line and would like to explore sponsorship opportunities for the Golf Day, please do so. Our corporate partners, just a reminder that we provide you with free CPD accreditation, and this includes all your internal activities that you'll be doing of an educational nature, your internal training, whether you're doing it online or in person. Those are CPD accredited by ISA as a value add to corporate partners. So for corporate partners on the line, do reach out to your human capital departments and remind them that IISA provides free CPD accreditation for corporate partners. Talking about CPD, one of the elements we emphasize on is that as a member, you need to continuously learn and not only to do the CPD activities at the end of the cycle. The CPD policy actually requires that you need to do at least 1.5 hours of a CPD activity per month. In that way, you are accumulating the hours, but you are learning as well. It is about learning. It's continuous learning and not only a compliance matter that many professionals only embark on at the end of the cycle. So do remember that you need to do at least one CPD hour activity. Like the InsureTalk, it is CPD accredited. The AIE 2026 planning is underway. The super early bird registration closed last week. We are now on early bird registration. So if you've missed the super early bird registration, you still have an opportunity to get discounted rates on the early bird registration that will be closing towards the end of the year. So take advantage of that and do join us for the AIE 2026. We are busy working on the content for AIE 2026. We're busy with research for the theme on how we can craft yet another experience from a content perspective that you would not want to miss. If you have suggestions, please feel free to reach us, drop us a note at the office with your suggestions. We will gladly incorporate that. Until next time, thank you.
Over to another regular insert, we have Rianette Whitehead. Now, we know Rianette as the co-owner and editor at FA News. She is also the brainchild behind the Insurance Apprentice. I was very, very fortunate to attend the Insurance Apprentice finale in Johannesburg, and my goodness, what a production. Lives changed, a celebration of excellence. What an amazing initiative to make all of us who work, participate, support this industry so unbelievably proud. And I believe the person we have to thank is Rianette. Rianette joins us each month where she gives us an update of the general media in the insurance industry. So let's hear what Rianette has to share today.
everyone, and welcome to InsureTalk. Today, I want to take you through the latest developments in the short-term insurance space, touch on what's happening in the insurance apprentice, and also reflect on something broader, the importance of wills and estate planning. Hear me out. So it's a mix of industry news, regulatory updates, and stories that reminds us why we do what we do and that what we do matters. So I did a little bit of a high-level scan on the press releases and the news in our space. And what really stood out for me are the themes that keep coming up again and again. Let's call them the issues that are trending without actually being trendy. So first, affordability and economic pressure are front and center. The cost of living is hitting households hard, and that means insurers are walking a tightrope between keeping cover affordable and still pricing for risk. You see this in premium increases, bigger excesses, and sometimes stripped down cover. Then climate and natural disasters are never far from the headlines. Floods, storms, hails, fires, they're becoming more frequent and more damaging. And our crumbling infrastructure does not help. Poor roads, weak water systems, power outages, all of this makes the impact of those events so much worse. On the regulatory and policy side, insurers are being pushed to be more transparent and to start reporting on climate-related risks. At the same time, tax changes and other cost drivers are squeezing margins. We're also seeing new risks creeping in: cybercrime, fraud, digital deception. These are very, very real challenges now. And in crime, theft, and the rising cost of repairing vehicles and assets. And you can see why claims costs are such a pain point. COVID, for some positive, for some negative, is a very, very hard topic. Don't shy away from COVID, from educating yourself around what exactly that means. There will be a time that it will be implemented. Don't put yourself in a difficult situation that is a last-minute exercise that you have to do. What the reality is that there will be, and in any case initially, a lot of admin associated with this new bill. So prepare yourself, start working on some of the stuff. It is a lot of work coming. But it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of innovation in our space. Insurers are experimenting with AI, with predictive modeling, with embedded products and parametric cover. And I think that's exciting because it means the industry is finding ways to stay relevant and accessible, even when money is tight. Finally, the insurance gap is still a big conversation. Millions of South Africans remain underinsured or not insured at all. So while the top of the market is innovating, there's a lot of discussions about how we reach the people who don't have basic protection in place. So if I had to sum it up, the space is dominated by affordability, disasters, regulation, digital risks, claims cost, innovation, and the ongoing challenge of access. Those are the themes shaping almost every short-term insurance conversation at the moment. Yes, I'll be talking about the insurance apprentice. So TIA Talks is the podcast that we do that is linked to the insurance apprentice. So over the 8 weeks of airing the episodes, we had some phenomenal podcast sessions with the contestants who were fired and the judges who did the firing. one contestant summed it up so well. They called it the conversation between the eliminated and the eliminator. So those sessions gave us some awesome insights into the tasks, the strategies, and yes, the emotions that came with each decision. We've had some interesting stats coming in from S3 about how we fared our very first season on the channel. Breaking into a prime time slot was always going to be tough, but let me tell you, it was most certainly a big win for insurance. The sentiment around the competition was overwhelming. It was really, really positive, and we reached over 2 million unique viewers. Now, if you add up all the viewership numbers across repeats and platforms, the total is obviously a lot higher, but those details are reserved for the eyes of the sponsors. So if you want to see that kind of data, the solution is simple. Become a sponsor and you'll be privy to some very interesting numbers. The reality is that that was a first for S3. It was a first for us. It was a big learning curve. The whole engagement from industry was for them very, very incredible to see how we as an industry really took part in conversations and really were part of the bigger picture. It was not just a competition from insurance that was aired on S3. The engagement they saw and they reckon it was really, really something special. For everyone who have not listened to the vodcasts, they are really, really worth it. It's 40 minutes that you can listen while you work. The latest one that came out is the Winners Vodcast, I would call it. It came out on Tuesday. It is a must watch, featuring Temwa, our 2024 winner, and our brand new 2025 winner, Kaya. You don't want to miss it. So while we're on that, a big, massive congrats to Kaya Moshologu from Old Mutual Insure. This was Old Mutual Insure's first winner, and I cannot be more impressed about the support they have given Kaya from the word go. So from my side, a big, big shout out to OMI. You're amazing. And maybe in the same breath, also a big shout out to Santam, who were incredibly supportive of Temwa, our winner of 2024. It is unbelievable to just hear and see how supportive these big brands are, which speaks directly into how supportive they are. So if you consider going onto this journey, know that 90% of these big corporates and of the companies you're working for will support you on your journey. They will support you on the journey. Brings me to a reminder that applications are open. Applications was going to close on the 30th of September, but because we only aired our latest and last episode in the beginning of September, we have moved the date to the end of October with elimination, pre-elimination round in Joburg in November, and possibly the elimination rounds in the beginning of December. Those dates will be finalized within the next few days because there are sponsors attached to everything and they need to give their final thumbs up for that. But that is more or less the timeline. Filming end of January before your year starts with a bang. So policy renewal, all those things are not an excuse. We know it's still fairly quiet. Over the years, it's been the magic time. It's been the best time to do the filming. So just take that into account when you decide. And if you decide that this is your year to enter. Okay, so I know we're operating in the short-term space, but we are all human and part of a bigger family. So I thought one of the things that we've seen now a lot, obviously in September is Wills Month in South Africa. And here's a sobering fact around wills. Around 65% of South Africans still die without a valid will. Think about what that means. all the work that people put into protecting their assets, their home, their car, their savings, even their insurance policies can unravel if there's no will. Estates get stuck in interstate succession, families face delays, disputes, and outcomes that may be completely different from what the deceased intended. This is where insurance and estate planning intersect. Advisors and brokers have a duty to remind clients having cover is important, but so is making sure that what is insured and accumulated goes where you want it to go. So, if you don't have a will, prioritize that. And as a broker, just remind your clients, even if that's not the space that you're directly operating, just throw it in and make sure that your clients do have that will. So to wrap it up, the industry is recovering financially, but facing challenges around transparency, complaints, and new risks. The Ombudsman is reminding us that clarity and fairness matter. The insurance apprentice is thriving with Kaya Mashalogu leading the way and applications open for the next season. And finally, Wills Month, a reminder, it's not enough to have cover. We need to ensure legacies are protected too. Thank you for joining me and enjoy the rest of your session. Cheers.
Okay, now it's time to kick up the feet, get a cup of coffee or a glass of water or tea, and listen to some incredible South African talent that is going to entertain us today. We are able to get these amazing, wonderful individuals to come and keep us busy while we catch our breath from the speakers because of the sponsorship we have with BASA. Now, some of you might have heard me talk about BASA before, but our InsureTalk Entertainment section is sponsored by BASA. This is the Business and Arts South Africa organization. They've been around since 1997, and it is so amazing because it's one of those successful joint initiatives between government and private sector. And BASA is specifically dedicated to fostering mutually beneficial partnerships between the business community and the arts. They have innovative programs, grants, research. BASA champions business investment in the creative sector, ensuring the relevance and sustainability of the arts in our society. We are so grateful to BASA for their unwavering commitment to bridging the gap between business and art and culture, commerce and culture, enriching both sectors for the greater good. And because of that support, we are very excited to welcome Andy Ralph, our Cape Town-based singer, for the next 10 minutes.
Hi, I am Andy Ralph, a 21-year-old performer based in Cape Town, and welcome to InsureTalk. Some people live for the fortune. Some people live just for the fame. Some people live for the power, yeah. Some people live just to play the game. Some people think that the physical things define what's within. And I've been there before, and that life's so bored, so full of the superficial. But some people want it all, but I don't want nothing at all if it ain't you, baby. If I ain't got you, baby. Some people want diamond rings, some just want everything, but everything means nothing if I ain't got you. Some people search for the fountain, promises forever young. Some people need 3 dozen roses, and that's the only way to prove you love them. Hand me the world on a silver platter, and what would it be? No one to share, no one who truly cares for me. But some people want it all, but I don't want nothing at all if it ain't you, baby. If I ain't got you, baby. Some people want diamond rings, some just want everything, but everything means nothing if I ain't got you, you. Some people want it all, but I don't want nothing at all if it ain't you, baby. If I ain't got you, baby. Some people want diamond rings, some just want everything, but everything means nothing if I ain't got you. If I ain't got you with me, baby. Ooh, said nothing in this whole wide world don't mean a thing if I ain't got you with me, baby. Because you know I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, Yeah, it's pretty clear. I ain't no size 2, but I can shake it like I'm supposed to do. 'Cause I got that boom boom that all the boys chasing. All the right junk in all the right places. I see the magazine working that Photoshop. We know that stuff ain't real. Come on now, make it style. If you got beauty, just raise them up. 'Cause every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about your size. She says, boys, like a little more booty to hold tonight. And oh, I won't be no stick figure, silicone Barbie doll. So if that's what you're into, then go ahead and move along. Because you know I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, no treble. I'm all about that bass, I'm bringing booty back. Go ahead and tell them skinny girls that. Now I'm just playing, I know you think you fair, but I'm here to tell you every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about your size. She says, boys, like a little more booty to hold tonight. And no, I won't be no stick figure, silicone Barbie doll. So if that's what you're into, then go ahead and move down. Nos got this kitties got that da 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 da. Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, Oh yeah, my mama, she told me worry about. I'm all about the bass. I'm all about the bass. I'm all about the bass. So what you just heard was If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys and a jazz version of All About That Bass by Megan Trainor. Thank you so much for watching, and you can catch me on all my socials at @AndyRalph_. Thank you.
And now I have the absolute privilege of introducing my favorite speaker on the panel today. I'm completely biased. CEO of the liability company, part of the Old Mutual group of companies, is Simon Coleman. And he is going to talk to us about the rise of the augmented underwriter. He's always testing my Afrikaans there. It's always hard for me to introduce Simon because I know so much about him, but let me do the professional bio here. Simon, the CEO of the liability company, is an underwriting manager of Old Mutual Insure as well as Omart Insure. He has over 30 years of experience in the insurance industry as a liability specialist and has spent much of the last 5 to 10 years developing digital underwriting and broking tools. Simon is also known as Judge Dredd on SABC3's The Insurance Apprentice. He's a fellow of the IISA and holds an HCII higher certificate and a diploma in digital business management from MIT and Columbia Business School in the USA. And I also can say that he holds the record as the best husband of 10 years. Simon, over to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can actually live up to that, maybe the husband bit. But I always appreciate being introduced by my wife. It's always weird when your partner calls you by your first name. I feel like I might have done something wrong or I'm in trouble in some way. But it's a real privilege to be back with you, all of you, on InsureTalk. And I actually can't, every time I speak at this, the number of participants has gone up by a few hundred people, and unless all of you are drinking your coffee and working on your emails right now, it looks like there's about 3,000 people tuned in, which is a little intimidating when you can't see anybody. My topic today, it's the rise of the augmented underwriter, and I'll share my presentation in a moment. Um, when I was deciding what I was going to call this, and the word augmented popped into my head, I did notice that it's traditionally used in the cosmetic surgery environment, particularly when one talks about breast enlargements. I can assure you that that is not the subject matter of today's talk. The augmented underwriter that we're going to be talking about is somebody who's enhanced in some way, made better by the use of artificial intelligence. So I've been using some form of AI with increasing frequency, probably for the last, I'd say, 4 years. And I have to say, my mind is continuously blown by this technology because it looks like every time I log into ChatGPT, for example, it can do more amazing things than it could the last time I logged in. So the progression is at breakneck speed, and it can actually be quite intimidating. And I remember some time ago, Christelle and I did a talk together, actually. I think it was the IIKZN that we were speaking at. And at the time, I remember we put out a poll amongst the audience. This is probably like 3 years ago. And we asked the audience who was using ChatGPT at the time. And a lot of people were not using it. And in fact, many said, what is this ChatGPT you speak of? But I know for a fact that if I ask the same question now, almost everyone in the audience will have had some experience with ChatGPT. The number of people not using it is now lower than the people that are using it in our industry. That's not to say that there aren't still some people who are uncomfortable with AI. But I have to wonder if, in 10, 15 years' time, it'll be so commonplace that we won't even call it artificial intelligence anymore. It'll just be one of the tools that we use to do our jobs. Someone said at another talk I attended, if you go to China and you want to order a takeout, there's no Chinese food listed on the menu because everything is in China, and they might refer to Italian food or something on the takeaway menu. So when you become used to something and you're immersed in it all the time, I think you stop labeling it as something kind of separate from yourself. But I just want to kind of take you back a little bit, not too far. So hopefully many of you on the call were alive in 1999. But if you cast your mind back to that time, you'll remember that, wow, we were in a panic in the insurance industry in particular, but globally we were all worried about Y2K. That this thing was looming and we had become so dependent on technology. And because of this error that programmers had made with the dates, everything was going to turn back to the year 1900 and planes were going to drop out of the sky, all of those things. And we'd already had the internet for probably 10 or 15 years at that point. How far we've come. Fortunately, nothing fell out of the sky over Y2K, and it turned out, I think, to be probably the biggest scam that the tech industry has pulled on most of us. Fortunes were spent to avoid a problem that just kind of passed us by without knowing about it. Or maybe that's because they did the job right and everything worked out. But look at where we were 4 years ago. Suddenly you don't have a dial-up internet line. You can just plug into fiber. You've got super fast access to the web. You can buy insurance online. You can trade in Forex. If you look at the likes of easy equities, without leaving your house, you could actually make a fortune and have a relatively successful career. The business that I work in at the liability company is fully remote, so we don't even have a physical office. Would never have been possible probably prior to COVID, if I'm completely honest. But here we are today. We've had access to the internet, and it's no big deal. You just kind of accept that you've got the supercomputer in your pocket, which you can tap into whenever you need to know something. But this new wave has just come and it's overwhelmed a lot of us. It's much bigger, I think, than the internet was. The rate of adoption is faster than we've seen even in the social media era. And I guess the internet redefined how we access information. But what AI does, the AI revolution, if you want to call it that, is it's not just helping us find things, it's really redefining how we think, how we decide. It's helping us make decisions, which the internet did not do. And in our space, in the specialist insurance space, it's also helping us to underwrite risks. I can do things much faster now than I could a couple of years ago. Now, if you, it was probably in July this year, perhaps June, McKinsey published a report. Actually, I think it was in May this year, and it was released at this African CEO forum, which I believe was taking place in Abidjan. And in that report, McKinsey had estimated that the African continent was probably going to unlock somewhere between 60 and $100 billion annually, just through the use of artificial intelligence. And sorry, I should qualify. They were talking specifically about in the insurance industry. Now that's it's a huge amount of money that could just be seemingly materialized out of nothing. But it's not just the generation of income, of course. It's the focus on profitability, and one would hope that, much like clients would be assured of having exactly the right cover, that underwriters would be in a better position to create more sustainable profits. And let's not lie to each other. Everyone is in the industry ultimately because they need to generate a profit for their shareholders. About 40% of institutions, particularly financial institutions across the continent, this is what McKinsey told us, we're already experimenting with generative AI in one form or another. And I'm not sure if you've experienced this. I've gotten quite a few calls from call centers recently where it's a bot. So it's an automated, it sounds like a real person, but you can tell that it isn't. So businesses are already experimenting with this. I can tell you this, after receiving the third or fourth automated call center call, I probably started wishing I could just get one of those annoying calls from a real person again. So we're not at the point yet where it's completely seamless and you cannot tell if you're chatting to a bot or to a person, but we will get there. And in our business, particularly in the specialist insurance market, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Old Mutual Insure's specialist team, we have to ask ourselves, well, we obviously don't want to be annoying like many call center agents can be. No disrespect. I know they're all just trying to make a living. But we don't want to be annoying, but by the same token, we also don't want to leave our clients, and you know, we only deal with brokers. We don't want to leave them feeling like we've just fobbed them off to some kind of AI tool. We know that AI can do a lot of stuff, but do people still want to talk to, you know, a person? Do they want to have a relationship with their insurer, or are they more than happy to just, you know, kind of engage with a machine? I mean, you could be thinking about this at the moment. Would you, I don't know when last any of you were inside an actual bank, Maybe you had to go in because you were getting a new card or something like that, and they needed to see you in person. But most people do not like standing in a queue inside the bank. They'll queue outside and they'll engage with an ATM, with an automatic teller, with no problem. I live in Hermanus now, and believe it or not, maybe given the average age of the population here, the bank is quite full all the time with real people and real tellers. So I'm not excluding anybody from this, but the reality is, in some instances, people prefer dealing with machines. So let me start introducing you to the concept of the specialist and why I do believe that we will continue to be necessary, that we will continue to add some value. That isn't a typing error. It doesn't read specialists aren't nice, they're necessary. We're not niche, we're necessary. So we do feel, and I put myself in this category, I don't really know anything about anything other than liability insurance, to be honest. When I'm on The Apprentice, and we're doing a Sasria task or a complex property task, I have to tell you, I have no clue what anyone is talking about. I'm just kind of writing in my notepad, hoping that Knox or the guest judge will step up and avoid making me and avoid me looking silly, rescuing me, really. So let's talk about the specialists. I don't think this has changed much over the years. Perhaps what we classify as specialist has changed, and you can have specialists in all the various environments in the insurance industry. But generally, that would be someone with deep product and industry knowledge, the ability to create or tailor some kind of complex cover or solve a complex problem for an insured and their broker. I would like to think that a specialist is a trusted advisor to the broker, not to the insured, because that's the broker's job. Because if you are a specialist, then I guess you're putting yourself out there as perhaps knowing something in depth about your subject matter. And I think that specialists do have that. Flesh and blood specialists, not augmented or added to in any way by AI. And then, of course, there's the courage to say yes or no. I know brokers don't really like hearing the word no. But of course, we have to be realistic. Not everything is possible, and once a specialist looks at something, hopefully they tap into their experience and expertise, and they'll have the courage to give the right answer that might not be pleasantly or welcomed by the broker that they're chatting to. But hopefully, if you just come back to being a trusted advisor and the ability to tailor complex cover, that there's never an outright no, and there's a, well, let's see what we can do. Can we put something together? Specialists should be good at that. So I don't think that AI is necessarily going to replace us. And we'll look at some examples where I think the decision-making process is handled better with the use of some AI tools. Much like, I can tell you now, when the internet came out, and I had been working without the internet for a while at the beginning of my career, just the ability to do research online was really a game changer for me as an underwriter, because, of course, we're expected to insure lots of different industries, but we don't always have the in-depth knowledge or skills in those particular industries. So the internet helped me, almost beyond measure. But now that we're in this AI environment, you obviously have a lot of benefits in using online tools. Firstly, underwriters, contrary to popular belief, are human beings, which means they do actually tend to be offline when they go home, and they get some sleep, and hopefully they come back to the office the next day or after the weekend fully refreshed and ready to find those solutions for you. But we do know that technological tools have given us all 24/7 access to information. We've been building something in my business at the liability company, which I know is going to fill a gap that we can't humanly fill. There are not enough of us in the company to speak to every broker all the time. And we know that if we give a broker a tool that will help them to find the answers, or at least frame their questions so that when they do get to speak to us, they've already got some idea of the direction that they want to go in. So, I mean, the internet changed everything. We've got digital policies being issued, now enhanced with AI, because policy documents can actually be generated based on certain inputs that have been captured in the system. But again, I just want to go back to what I said earlier, which was we kind of moved from being able to do things easily with the internet to somehow enhancing our ability to make judgment calls on things. So, you know, we've got something now where I can feed a proposal form into this, and our bot Billy will read it and give us some insights based on what's been captured on that form and prompt us to ask more questions. She is a she, she's gotten very good at doing those kind of tasks. She highlights certain risk areas, but she doesn't have the ability to see into the gray areas. I don't know where AI will be in a few years from now, but this is why I see us working together with these AI tools, because especially with liability insurance in my space, there's not always enough data to make an accurate or to feed it into a system and then, you know, use some kind of algorithm to figure out the answer. It still needs that heart and gut combo that comes with the specialist, or that the specialist underwriter has. And then, of course, I mean, it would be remiss of me not to mention this, because I think most of the people on this call today are brokers. And you'll all know better than anyone the value of a relationship with your client. There are people that don't really want that, and you know, they're welcome to go and engage with a digital platform if that's how they want to buy their insurance. But generally, to all the people in this room, one of your value propositions that's always going to be strong is that people still want that human interaction. They want to have a conversation. They want things to be revealed. They want to tap into your expertise. That doesn't mean that you can't be using AI in the background, of course. Just like in the environment that I work in, I mean, I can a set of financials for a D&O risk in a few minutes now that would have previously taken us, you know, a few hours. And if it's a complex listed company, it could probably take the whole day and even into the next day. So there's no doubt that this makes us faster and better at what we do. But I don't believe that the AI tools that we're using are going to replace that ability to make those spur of the moment judgment calls. Someone said to me, in fact, I've got it written down here. Someone said AI is not the same beast as the internet. This time the machine doesn't just connect people. It thinks, it learns, it recommends, and it decides. And I think that's where I sort of departed from what was being told to me. I think that the decision-making process, yes, on the more repetitive tasks, agreed. But I still think that combination of having the specialist operating with the tools is the way to go. So it's not man versus machine. And if you are on social media, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scare tactics related to AI. I'm not saying that there are no risks associated with AI, but there's a tendency to kind of pit us against the AI tools rather than seeing us working together. And this is the concept of the augmented underwriter. So this is kind of where we come in. So you've still got a specialist with that deep product knowledge, but now armed with the AI tools, we can now scan, assess, and we can just really move quicker in our decision-making process. There is a cautionary here. This is a cautionary tale for all of us in the industry and for any professional, actually, that one can become quite lazy, I guess is the word, where you would just go, well, I'm just going to ask my chat GPT how to answer this, or how to respond to an email, or how to do a deep dive into this risk, without verifying the information that's coming out. And I'm sure you've attended enough talks now to know that we've had some attorneys here in South Africa that got into trouble because they used ChatGPT to prepare their arguments, and some sort of random fictitious case law was used. So it's not to say that we're delegating all of our professional responsibility to these tools. We must still we must still know about these things. We must still check the content, but we should be better equipped because we're using the AI tools. So we'd be more data informed, more responsive, and I think more relevant, but not replaced. So the AI is kind of bringing us the intelligence for us to look at, but then we must bring the judgment, the context, and maybe above all, we bring the heart, because there might be circumstances where we have to deviate from the textbook definition or the textbook recommendation of something. And you will also have heard some of the scary stories about, the developers of these AI tools kind of embedded their own biases and discrimination, all of those things built into the tools. So it's up to us as the professionals that use them to make sure that we're getting balanced views. If you attended my last talk at InsureTalk, I spoke about prompt bias, which is where, if you ask ChatGPT, for example, a question and you bias your question, the response is also going to be biased. So if you say, tell me how to write this risk, you will get 10 good points on why you should do it. But if you say, give me a balanced approach on the positives and negatives of this risk, that's more useful to an underwriter and in fact to any professional in the insurance industry. So I say here, what do people actually want from us? What do brokers want? And I think that having an API that connects one system to the other in a secure way, that's fantastic. Someone gets a seamless experience when they're using the technology. But if you've just had a claim, and in my space, when there's a liability claim, I'm not suggesting there's no trauma when there's an assets claim. But often there's reputational risks, and there's bad blood between the customer and the policy holder, the third party. So just somebody that says while they're dealing with the claim, how's your client doing through all of this? How are they coping with this? As I said that, I wonder if actually we're doing that even as people. You might be submitting a claim and you never hear that from your claims person. And it should be, because we're dealing with human beings here in a variety of different business spaces. But you get what I'm saying. So I'd like to think I know what you want as brokers. I don't know everything that you want, but I know what's been told to me or what's been requested. And these are some of the things. So, brokers have said to me, I want it to happen quickly, but I also want it to make sense to me. And there's that risk, of course, just getting something off the internet, off ChatGPT or Gemini, and then just banging it out to the broker. You would never do that as a broker to your clients because they're going to come back with more questions. I want some options. That's the other thing that I've heard on my quotes on the solution that you're offering. But I also want some empathy. You would have heard me speak about this on the Insurance Apprentice. I am a believer that empathy is important, and it's important in every relationship, whether it's business or pleasure. Basically, we have to have this. And that will be what secures our role in this as human beings. Brokers say, I want answers, but I don't want it to be automated. I don't want it to look like, it's just kind of, there's something coming from somewhere. It's not really taking into account the nuances. I want the answers, but I want it to still come from a person. So I think that this is why, in spite of this digital evolution, the relationships still matter, because you're never really going to trust a chatbot, right? But once you've looked someone in the eye and you've had a meeting with them, you've had conversations, that trust comes from people. It comes from us, and I think that that's a very strong value proposition for us. So I saw Luandile spoke earlier about, future fit or future proofing business. So we need to go, well, what are the skills that we need for tomorrow? And I've said they're literally tomorrow. So I don't mean like in 10 years' time. I mean, what are the skills we need for the new stuff that the AI can do tomorrow? What do we not have today that we're going to need when we walk into that office tomorrow? And the general thinking is that by 2030, there'll be new specialization fields emerging in the industry. So you'll have your ESG and climate litigation underwriting. That's not something that's featuring in the casualty insurance space. I know it is featuring in the property insurance space. Cover for AI specifically, we're already seeing a lot of professionals using AI. Social media reputation risk. There'll be all these new products that we have to kind of figure out. And we're going to have to know how to read the data that we're presented with. We won't need to be, my stepson, Chris, he's doing his BSc in computer science. And, I don't know what he's talking about half the time, really. I hate asking him how his exam went because he overwhelms me with detail. We don't need those skills as underwriters and as brokers, but we need to know how to read the output. We need to know how to engineer our prompts so we get the right stuff coming back out. We need to work on our soft skills. You bring in someone young into your business. I don't know what kind of environment they've grown up in necessarily, but certainly if much of their engagement has been behind a screen, there might be some work that needs to be done on the face-to-face engagement front, working on empathy and relationship building. I have to say I've not noticed this. The young people that I've worked with do have these skills. So maybe it's worrying about nothing. People often say, well, you grew up with a cell phone in your hand, so you have no idea how to look someone in the eye and communicate. I don't know. If you look at photographs of people traveling on a train in the 1950s, somewhere around there, no one's looking at anybody. They're looking at a newspaper or a book or something. So maybe that stuff hasn't changed that much, but it's important we keep our eye on it. That kind of critical thinking and adaptability is going to be very important for underwriters and brokers. And then we need that level of courage, so that we can challenge the machines and the markets that we operate in. So I suppose I could say I don't think AI is necessarily going to replace underwriters. I don't think AI is going to replace brokers either. But I do think that AI is going to replace the people who don't know how to use it. So that augmented underwriter, augmented broker, if you also want to use that term, the person who's enhanced their own skill set and their knowledge and their abilities using AI is definitely going to outshine the person that doesn't know how to use those tools. So what do we have to do here? And I'm going to wrap up straight after this slide. So I think that, yeah, be curious. Don't be afraid. One of the best things for me about the likes of ChatGPT and other tools like it, like Gemini, is that you can engage with it the same way you would with a friend or a colleague on WhatsApp. So you don't need any special skills really to start to experience it. Someone told me in my team a couple of days ago that someone in the US, I think, had wanted to marry their AI bot, the ChatGPT. I mean, that's obviously taking it too far. But you need to be curious about these things. And above all, I guess we need to hold on to our humanity. You know, don't let the machines dictate to us what we need to be doing. We need to embrace the augmentation and try and sort of wrap our arms around the technology and our humanity at the same time. So I think that the rise of the augmented underwriter isn't about replacement of people. It's about real people rising, but with access to better tools, you know, so that we can make a better impact. That's how I see that rolling out. So please, let's not fear the future. Let's build it together with each other, obviously, and I think also with the technology. Yeah, pack up your fear in a jiffy bag or wherever else you want to put it. Open your arms up, open up your mind, and start thinking about what amazing things you can do with this technology behind you. And I thank you all for listening to me today. Do you guys want me to tell some jokes here, or is there like a tune that's going to play?
Okay, so on to the last speaker of the day. Please don't leave us yet. You have to hear this last speaker. We have Sean Scandling. Sean's going to talk to us. He's the Managing Director of HDI Global, South Africa, navigating geopolitical risks, how global tensions reshape insurance and risk management. And I just want to remind all of you, before I tell you a little bit more about Sean, you will get your CPD certificates. If you're a member of the IISA with the various options that they have available to us, and you register with a correct email address, you will get your CPD certificates automatically uploaded to the IISA portal. We will not forget to send you CPD certificates. If you have a question, the producers will pop an email address into the chat. We can't answer the questions on the chat here, so please bear with us. I know I get my certificates every single month, well in time for the submission in May with the IISA. So Sean Scandling, our next speaker, is an insurance professional who has been in the insurance industry for 26 years. He spent most of his career specializing in aviation insurance, working in both the insurer and the broking side. I would like to know which one he prefers, actually. Sean successfully built an aviation underwriting manager before joining AIG in 2012, where he held several leadership roles, including head of property and specialty risks for Africa. He joined HDI Global in 2020 as Managing Director. And with that bio, I think he is very well positioned to talk to us on navigating geopolitical risks, how global tensions reshape insurance and risk management. Thanks for joining us today, Sean.
Thanks, Christelle. Thanks, Christelle. I appreciate the introduction. I think my listening to Simon's bio, mine probably requires a little bit more work. And as for your question as to which side I prefer, I won't step into that trap. So yes, I've been in the insurance industry for nearly 30 years. And one of the things that really kind of fascinates me as an insurance professional is how the intersection of the macro and the micro environment impact our industry. And today I'll touch on one of those macro kind of topics and explore that a little bit with the audience. I'll be with you for about 30 minutes. There is opportunities in the Q&A to ask questions, and if I can get to those at the end, I will. Otherwise, we do have an email address at the end which you can send your questions to. So, excuse me. You'll have to just excuse me. I'm struggling with a little bit of a few allergies due to the change of season. So I'm going to skip past I'm going to quickly share my slides. Give me a second. Okay. There we go. Okay. So just a little bit about HDR for those that don't know the company. It's a German company that's been around for over 120 years now, specializing in corporate and specialty insurance. We've been in South Africa for nearly 30 years now as well. And so, yeah, a well-established company who supports our clients globally, as you can see there, 39 operations and a network of 175 countries. I would not be an insurance professional if I didn't have some form of disclaimer. So today, as I'm taking you through, I'll share reference to some reports, some tools. We don't endorse these or recommend them in any way. They're just for illustrative purposes. And really, what we're trying to achieve with thought leadership is to get you to think about these topics and to go away and to do some of your own research, explore the topics for yourself. But the idea is to get you to think about these things. So why are we going to discuss this today? Why is this topic relevant now? So geopolitics has an impact on insurance, and we'll explore that. The world is very connected. I think it's more connected than it's ever been. But at the same time, ironically, it's very fragmented. And geopolitics isn't really abstract for us anymore. It's not kind of some distant headline that we see on a news network or one of our feeds. It's real world for us and has real world implications for us. And it has a direct impact on the insurance industry, and it impacts us here in South Africa. We've seen supply chains disrupted. We've seen energy prices skyrocketing. The escalation of cyber threats is all fueled. And we look at the various conflicts around the world, and we'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. So for us as an insurance industry, we can't ignore it anymore. It's not an option for us to ignore it anymore. And we'll, through this presentation, I'll try and raise some of the awareness of that and how geopolitics impacts us and our clients. So let's set the stage for geopolitics. So if you go back to the 23rd of February 2022, we go to bed, we wake up on the 24th of February with a conflict that has now erupted in Eastern Europe. Almost overnight, global commodity prices surged. We had to see shipping routes rerouted, and the ripple effect impacted us down here in South Africa too. We know that over 30% of our wheat imports come from Russia and Ukraine. So we had some real concerns in terms of food security on the back of that conflict. And these are the kind of things that we don't think about. I'll touch a little bit later and have a good example on how supply chain is impacted through geopolitics. But yes, real world consequences for conflicts that erupt on another continent on the other side of the world. Geopolitics is really the art and science of international relations, and it's always influenced risks. We can think back to the Cold War, the oil crisis in the 1970s, but certainly in the 21st century, it has escalated and elevated to a new level. We've had trade wars between superpowers. Even on the African continent, there's a number of insurgencies, and we think about the one in Sahel, which was quite significant. And all of this amplifies uncertainties for us as an insurance industry. How do we transfer and mitigate risks in those uncertain times? In South Africa, we still have one of the biggest economies on the African continent, and so we are vulnerable to a lot of these geopolitical topics and the effects of them. But we also have our own domestic volatilities. We think about load shedding, and that gets exacerbated by energy shocks around the world, our port problems, which are exacerbated by the Red Sea disruptions. And so, we have a multiplier effect in South Africa related to the geopolitics. So we're going to talk about how that's reshaping the insurance industry. We'll explore the impact on the industry, challenges in underwriting and pricing, and then just broader kind of business implications too. And by the end of it, as I said a little bit earlier, I hope I'll have given you something to think about, something to ponder on, and how you solve as an insurer or a broker for your client in this changing world in geopolitics. So as I mentioned, geopolitics is not a new concept, but in today's world, it's multifaceted. It's accelerated by technology, and that technology advancement also makes it largely borderless. So if we again go back to the example of the Russia invasion of Ukraine, it wasn't just a European tragedy. It was a global tragedy and a crisis. It inflated insurance premiums, and we saw really big aviation losses related to that. We've obviously seen political violence pricing impacted by that. And if we fast forward now to 2025, we're still seeing the aftershocks of that. So we're seeing sanctions that are imposed on Russia, which impact trade, pushing up costs from wheat to semiconductors. And we know the demand for semiconductors is really high at the moment. It's predicted it'll be double-digit growth in 2025. And semiconductors also support two of the fastest growing sectors for us today, and that's namely AI and renewable energy. And it also supports a number of other sectors too, with all of the technology advancements. So closer to home in Africa, the picture is just as turbulent. I mentioned Sahel a little bit earlier, and that spilled over into Mali and Nigeria, and it displaced millions and millions of people. It also displaced or interrupted mining operations that were critical to platinum and cobalt supplies. And in Southern Africa, just our neighbor, Mozambique, the Cabo Delgado region, we saw insurgencies there that threatened major gas projects. And those gas projects, one could argue, could power or largely power our continent. If you have a look at this slide quickly, since 2014, there are no less than 150 conflicts ongoing in any one year, and that's significant. We obviously can't ignore, the two major powers being US and China and their trade wars. The tariffs and tech bans are choking supply chains and electronics. They're hitting the manufacturing sector hard. We obviously know that there's a lot of tensions in the Middle East, and the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, forcing ships to go around, taking much longer voyages and costing a lot more. If you have a look at this slide, you'll see just there in late 2023, early 2024, the cost shot up in terms of shipping, and that was due to the Houthi attacks. And I'll preempt any question on the 21-22. That was, as far as I could tell in my research, it was still related to COVID and the backlogs and the container buildups, and then some staff shortages, which seem to have eased through 2023. But I think the point of the slide is to show you that the attacks, the Houthi attacks, had a significant cost in terms of shipping. So what is driving this? What's driving the this kind of tidal wave of geopolitics? Well, it's the speed and the scale. Things are changing at such a pace now, unbelievable and really difficult for us to keep up with. And then you think about how climate change intersects with geopolitics. Droughts in the Horn of Africa can fuel resource conflicts. You think about the melting of the Arctic, which opens up new shipping lanes, and those are contested by Russia and NATO. And then obviously, cyber is a real big topic for us. It just adds another layer. State-sponsored cyber attacks, much of those attributed to North Korea and Iran. They target critical infrastructure, and the main kind of reason for those is to disrupt what goes in another country. In 2024 alone, we saw a 30% uptick in ransomware claims linked to geopolitical actors, and that's according to industry reports. And for South African insurers, what does this mean? Well, things that were once siloed are not siloed anymore. Political risk, political violence, supply chain failures, and cyber are now all converging. And according to the World Economic Forum, its Global Risk Report ranks geopolitics as the top risk in the next decade. And we as the insurance industry need to be aware of this. We can't ignore it. It's part of our responsibility to help our clients identify these problems, the risks that are on the horizon, how we deal with them, how we can support them, and mitigate them. So we need to be really aware of what's going on. We need to keep our finger on the pulse of geopolitics. So how does this impact the insurance industry? And it's really a deluge. I mean, as I speak about the pace and the severity of some of these geopolitical activities around the world. It's really a lot to deal with. The insurance sector is a good analogy. It's the canary in the coal mine. When risks escalate, so do our exposures. We see the frequency of claims go up. We see severity spiking. Political violence and civil unrest, once were, I would say, niche products, and now they're in high demand because of what's going on around the world. And we see there, going back a couple of slides, over 150 conflicts on the go for the last 11 years. And so that product is now, was once niche, is now really a must. And in South Africa, we've seen a surge of civil unrest of our own, and that's amplified by food inflation, and then poor service deliveries does nothing to reduce the risk of civil unrest in South Africa. For reinsurers, they're feeling the strain too. The global reinsurers are concerned about correlated risks, and are cautious about emerging markets. We've seen, obviously, those that are involved in purchasing political violence cover would have seen the prices multiply in the last couple of years. There seems to be a little bit more stability in recent months, but certainly over the last couple of years, the political violence pricing has really skyrocketed. Property insurance was really hit hard by supply chain disruptions. So you can think about the floods, the KZN floods, and you can think about scenarios where you want to reinstate, and it's a critical piece of equipment, but because of supply shortages, delays in delivery, and potential sanctions issues, those reinstatements take a lot longer and inevitably may be a lot more expensive. Let's think about a renewable energy operation. So you have a major loss on a renewable energy operation, which is, we know critical infrastructure, becoming more and more of a critical infrastructure for us here in South Africa. And semiconductors are key component in renewable energy. So I just want to pause on semiconductors for a moment. And if you have a look at this slide, semiconductors are used in everything from AI, EVs, Internet of Things devices, and a number of other technological devices. And if you have a look at this slide, you'll see the concentration of producers, predominantly Taiwan and the US. And we know the tensions, the trade tensions between the US and China. We also know the territorial tensions between China and Taiwan. And any sort of disruptions with these producers can cause major problems. I mean, we had a sniff of semiconductor shortages back during COVID. Have a look at this slide, quite interesting again. So now you look at the critical minerals that are required to make semiconductors. You look at the top producing countries, it's quite diverse, but then you have a look at who processes it, predominantly China. And so you can see, again, any geopolitical disruption could have a major impact on semiconductors. Now, suppose if we looked at any other critical sector, we could probably create the same sort of picture in terms of supply chain. But the point is this, that supply chains are very complicated, and any sort of geopolitical destabilizing will have an impact on us globally, no matter where you are in the world. On the liability front, D&O policies are under pressure because of regulatory fallout. Geopolitical sanctions can complicate things for multinational companies, leading to fines and litigation. And then cyber insurance, which I touched on a little bit earlier in the presentation. In 2020, this was a $10 billion global market. It's projected to be 25 billion by 2027. Now, there are estimates that say up to 1/3 of all cyber attacks are state-sponsored, and that's quite a big number. Give you a couple of examples on this. So if you look at the 2020 South Korea cryptocurrency, and you'll see that North Korea targeted the South Korea cryptocurrency exchange with phishing emails, and they attempted to steal user data, but they also were looking to take digital currency funds. And that, again, major attack and can be very, very disruptive. We look at the Ukrainian energy company. So again, on Christmas Day, a big attack on Ukraine. They remotely disabled switches and circuit breakers, and they cut off electricity to hundreds of thousands of people for several hours on Christmas Day. So devastating impact again. And so you can see geopolitics and cyber again, intersection. And for us here in South Africa, global decisions can be a little bit lopsided. As an example, EU carbon taxes, border taxes, could add up to 20% on our exports, inflating commercial risks for our clients. But in all of this, there are opportunities, and parametrics is one of those opportunities. If you have the right geopolitical trigger and you have reliable alerts, you could have quick payouts for these situations. Now, I'll just put a caveat there. This is somewhat of a conceptual idea, but the point is that these are ideas that people are thinking about and people are trying to solve. And so opportunities exist. And that's again, to one of my comments at the outset is, that's the great thing about being in the insurance industry. We have to deal with challenges that are cross-sector, across country, and as I mentioned, technology makes them borderless. And is a real privilege in the insurance industry to be able to try and solve for those problems. So underwriting consideration. So this is really the heart of the challenge for us as the insurance industry. Underwriting and pricing in the era of geopolitics is difficult. The traditional actuarial models rely on historical data, which are somewhat predictable. But geopolitics, we have to admit that are probably more in the black swan territory. We don't know what we could wake up to. In my example, you go to bed on the 23rd of February 2022 and wake up to a conflict in Eastern Europe on the 24th of February. So we just don't know what tomorrow can hold. And how do you predict and price and model for those things? And that's the big problem, right? It's data scarcity. Now, how do you quantify political risks? Now, there are tools like geopolitical risk index from the IMF, but they're backward looking. It's not forward looking. It looks at events that have already taken place. Underwriters can also struggle with attribution. So, as an example, there's a fire at a factory in Durban. Is that a local arson, or can it be linked to a supply chain sabotage tied to an international espionage? And so it becomes a grey area for our underwriters. Pricing becomes more difficult. We've seen the CAT bond for geopolitical events flop. Investors demand really high yields for those, and these are some of the reasons. So the ambiguity of the risk, the correlation with political violence, and then, as I had already alluded to, is the limited historical data. CAT modeling software is really great, and we've seen that evolve in our industry over the last few years as climate has impacted on us and our clients. We've seen tools really improve, but that doesn't help us with human-driven risks. And for pricing, there's other things to consider, like moral hazards. A client who may want to conserve his premium, and we know in South Africa we would never have a client like this. They want to, try and manage their premiums, so they underreport their exposure, and then, a couple of months down the line, we find out that their mining operation in some country has been impacted because of a coup, and that could result in a major claim for our clients. And so those are the kind of things that we, as the insurance industry, have to grapple with. Insurers could play the what-if scenario game, but again, these are resource intensive, and you require real expertise in that space, and good intelligence too. And Control Risks is a company that provides good intelligence, but do you build up resources within your company to be able to do that? Those are questions that we have to ask ourselves. So what are the results? So premiums rising annually for exposed lines. But what does that do for our small businesses? That alienates them. They either have to sit without the cover, they have to self-insure, but then we create a problem for ourselves too, because if we price ourselves out of the market, we won't be competitive. If you underprice, we invite potential unprofitability and insolvency. So what are some of the broader implications? So for our clients, geopolitics demands a bit of a mind shift from a reactive to a resilient. Supply chain diversification, that is not an option anymore. It's something that needs real focus, and it could become existential. For a South African exporter who relies on Chinese components that could face US sanctions, that could turn their stocks from an inventory into a liability. For companies, they need to include geopolitics into their risk management framework, and they need to do it at board level too. I mentioned D&O a little bit earlier, and you can imagine a scenario where a board is not well informed about the geopolitical aspects related to their business and creates a failure or a major risk event for their company, the board of directors may be held accountable. You also have to think about ESG factors, so things that were once siloed, like climate change. People are now doing climate migration, so they're moving from one country to another because of things like droughts, but then it creates other societal tensions in those countries. From us on the African continent, at least, with insurance penetration at 3%, you have a major event where a lot of the risk is uninsured. That again can cause a broadening of the inequality and instability within a region. Those are things that we need to think about. So for us as the insurance industry, we're not only accepting risk and transferring risk, we need to become risk advisors too. We need to help clients to understand what their options are, what tools they can use, and how they best can navigate and mitigate the risks that are presented to them. So we have to blend ourselves in it with it as insurers and consultants for our clients. Simon spoke about artificial intelligence, and there's a risk of using too much artificial intelligence. That artificial intelligence is data base sourced. So if you're pulling data from the wrong artificial intelligence tool that doesn't have the right nuance in terms of African exposure and understanding the African context, you may be getting skewed results. So we shouldn't have an over-reliance on artificial intelligence. And we think about the 2008 financial crisis. What could be the next one triggered by a geopolitical event, a major cyber event causing a global blackout? Those are real possibilities. So what do we do? What can we do? So strategies must be proactive. We must collaborate and become more adaptive. We need to build geopolitical intelligence into our DNA as an underwriting and broking partners with our clients. We could partner with think tanks and run war game session, investing in data analytics and more monitoring than we are doing today in terms of what conflicts are going on around the world. We could also diversify our portfolios by territory to avoid geopolitical risks and by line of business. We need to look at how we price things and how adaptive we can be in that space. Can we do it more real time than we are today? And do we embrace things like blockchain for more transparent supply chain? And as mentioned before, parametrics. There are tools like what I'm putting on the screen now, which is the BlackRock tool, which also monitors events from around the world. And so if you do research, when I was preparing for this talk, I did quite a bit of research, and there are a number of these tools out there and that are available. And so it requires effort from our side to go and identify exactly what those are, identify exactly what we can introduce into our business from an insurance perspective, but also what we can recommend to our clients. And so for our clients, what's clear? Well, they also need to conduct geopolitical stress testing on their supply chains. They need to diversify their supply chains too. They can't have all of their eggs in one basket. They need to build liquidity for possible geopolitical events and look at options like captives for real major extreme events. So none of these are really a silver bullet in terms of solutions for our clients or for ourselves as the insurance industry. But what my message is that we need to be more proactive than we are today. These are real threats to us and our clients, and we need to be a lot more proactive than we are today. So as I wrap this up, let's just reflect quickly. So geopolitics isn't just a headline from some distant country. It's something real that impacts us on our shores and our continent. We need to build resilience into our own operations and help our clients build resilience into their operations. As the insurance industry, we serve an amazing purpose. We step in and we support our clients when they need us the most, whether it's through COVID, riots, floods, and this new frontier of geopolitics, among other things. We serve a real purpose, and it's a privilege to be in this industry. So my challenge to you is to go out, think about this topic, think about geopolitics, the geopolitical lens in the week, reach out to your peers and have discussions, talk about these kinds of things as we try and solve for them. And together we can try and insure against any one of these scenarios that lay out. And the reality is that the pace of change means that these kinds of things are going to happen more and more, and that they're going to be different kinds of risks, and we need to think about them often and try and solve for them. And I'll just end with this quote by Stephen Covey: "If there's something that's certain in business, it's uncertainty." And with that, I thank you for your time. It was a privilege to be able to talk to almost 3,000 people on the call, and those that will watch the recording afterwards. I hope you found it insightful. If you do have any questions, I'll pause on that slide for a moment, so you can send them to Sheldon Prince. He will just pass them on to me, and we will respond to you as soon as we can. We're happy to engage with you on the topic, and I do have a number of resources that are used for this. Happy to share those too if you reach out. So with that, thank you very much.
And just like that, we've reached the end of our September edition of InsureTalk. I want to just finish off by saying thank you to Old Mutual Insure. You bring the best speakers, you support us, and you enable this amazing platform to share knowledge and to grow in our professional development. So thank you, OMI. We appreciate you. Before you leave us, I just want to remind all of you, those based in Johannesburg, that we have InsureTalk Live coming to us in November. What does that mean? That means that a small group of people, a few hundred max, if I remember correctly, will be able to join us live at a venue and be part of the audience while we broadcast InsureTalk to the rest of the country. The tickets will be going on sale very soon on the CN&CO website. Producers will drop a link into the chat to remind you. So if you're based in Joburg or you're planning on flying up to Joburg to join us, come and meet us in person. It's a wonderful networking event. You get to meet not just people in the industry that you work with, but also some of the speakers will be around to engage with our audience. So I wish you a wonderful end of September as we embark on a new season, and see you next month.